Sustainability is impossible to ignore in our daily lives, but when it comes to our horses, it's not always the first thing that we think about, and it is certainly not something that we associate with saving money. Today, I have come to Mill Farm in Somerset with SEIB Insurance Brokers. Mill Farm are one of the most sustainable yards in Britain, and so we've come here to learn a little bit more about their sustainability practices and what we, as livery yard owners and liveries, can learn and do to be more sustainable. Nestled in Somerset, just a stone's throw away from Cheddar Gorge, Mill Farm have won SEIB's DIY Livery Yard of the Year for 2 years running as part of the SEIB Yard of the Year Awards in association with Horse and Hound and British Equestrian. So Rob and Julia, thank you so much for having us here at Mill Farm. Tell us a little bit about how long you've had the farm for.
About 16 years.
Nice.
And the farm, and we've had horses here for 10 years.
So we just bought a field, and it was a completely flat field when we bought it. So
wow.
We've done it over that period, haven't we?
Yeah.
So every fence post
Wow,
I banged in myself.
So everything that we can see was actually just one big patch of land to begin with.
Yeah.
And when did the sustainability initiatives sort of start being something that you wanted to do?
Probably in the last 10 years. We started off with solar panels on the shed roofs, which you can see quite nicely from up here. So we were one of the first in the county, really, as soon as they came up. And it went from there. Robert's quite keen on it, with water recycling for the whole farm. He devised a system so the water's recycled all out to the water troughs as well, in the field, and it carried on.
And I know that when we think of sustainability, we don't always think this is actually a really good way to save money, but it is. And I think a lot of the things that you do here actually are, you'd like to think, saving money, and that's such a topical thing in the equestrian space at the moment. Does it enter your head when you're thinking, what's the next thing we could do? Are you thinking, actually, this is a good way to save money, or is it really just about the planet?
Save money.
Yes, yeah.
And you like
And
to
save the planet.
and save the planet.
And obviously you have DIY liveries here. How have you found that they've responded to the sustainability measures?
No one comes and says, oh, I want to come here with my horse because you've got
it's
solar
sustainable.
panels.
Yes, yes.
No one's ever said that.
But you know, isn't that, in a way, it's such a wonderful thing, because it shows that the sustainability practices you have are so sort of folded into the fabric of what is the yard, that actually no one is like, oh gosh, it's making everything really difficult, or it's making everything really expensive. Actually, you're just like, no, these things just make sense from a monetary point of view, from a practical point of view, and from a sustainability point of view.
Absolutely.
And just a final question from me. If we have any livery yard owners who are watching and would like to start their sustainability journey, or their money saving journey, as it is always also being seen here, where is the easiest place to begin?
LED lights, no energy lights, and having sensors on your outside lights so they go on and off. And then people don't forget to turn them off then.
Having the timers on the steamers as well. Recycling boxes in the kitchen or tap area would be good.
That cuts down on the rubbish.
Yeah, and recycling shavings bags. They're all relatively easy measures.
A lot of those you mentioned actually were around electric, which I think is very topical at the moment with the price of it. So the girls here are about to take us down to the cross-country course and show that off. But before we go, Rob, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about some of the measures that you have up here in the school.
Yeah, there's a camera which records what's going on in the arena in case there's an accident.
And you save that recording for 3 months, right? So it's
Yes.
quite handy from an insurance point of view.
Yeah, so we can go back and check.
Now, interestingly, at Mill Farm, there are also cameras in the stables, and later on in this video, we're going to be hearing from a livery who used those in a crucial moment when their horse was unwell, and it saved them several trips to the yard. But before we get to that, we're going to head down to the cross country with these guys. So just while we're on our way down to the cross country, I've stopped off at the hay and haylage area, because there's a couple of really sustainable things here that I think you're going to find really interesting. As horse owners, we all know how much hay can get wasted from our horses, and just watching the money disappear every time you muck out. What's really nice about Mill Farm is that any hay that is left over that you know that the horses aren't going to eat gets given to the cattle, which is awesome. The second thing that I want to show you is in the soaking and steaming area. And I'm meeting up with one of the liveries to hear a little bit more. So Shona, we're here with 2 hay gain steamers, which I think it's fair to say the idea of them being left on is probably a Livery Yard's maybe top bugbear behind leaving lights on. So talk to me a little bit about the setup here.
Yeah, so we have 2 timers, one for 1 hour and one for 30 minutes. And obviously, as you can see, one is larger,
yes,
and one is small. So if you only have one hay net,
oh yeah, I didn't actually think about that.
Yeah, you don't have to turn the whole thing on.
Yeah,
it just saves putting one big hay gain on.
Yes, for one tiny hay net.
Yeah. Depending obviously on the timings, it means that you can turn the hay gain on before you leave the yard, and then you know it's going to go off.
What I'm noticing here from what you've said and from actually the entire yard tour is that yes, a lot of these measures are great for sustainability, but they also make just practical sense, both from a monetary and a practical point of view, right?
Yeah, definitely. Rob and Julia are always thinking about ways to make our lives easier, as well as being environmentally friendly as well.
Alright Rob, we've got a big bucket of sheep feed, and I have to say, I spotted your solar panels when we were on the cross country with the girls, but my first thought, and I'm really sorry for saying this, my first thought was like, oh, that's quite a lot of land just to have solar panels on, and then I noticed that there were sheep underneath.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that.
There's 4 acres of solar panels here, which are community owned.
Oh wow.
And we just put the sheep under to eat the grass down.
That's awesome. So what does it mean that they're community owned? What does that mean?
The village raised £1.1 million, I think about 10 years ago, and put in these solar panels, and everyone who invested is getting a good return on their money.
Well, especially at the moment, I imagine.
Yeah.
So you were just telling me about how obviously these are community owned, but that actually that has a really big impact on charity as well, which I wasn't expecting. So tell me a bit about that.
So it's because it was set up as a community EIS, what happens is a percentage of profits every year go to local charitable causes. In the 10 years that these have been established, we've given away over £100,000 to local community projects with a sustainable or green element. We put a number of solar panels on local village halls, battery storage at the playing fields. We've helped green art groups, we've helped all sorts of projects in the local area with some sort of green initiative.
Just one final element that I just had to get on camera, because we were just having a conversation then about how it's so surprising that it's community funded and the community is part of this. And you told me a really, really lovely story about the setup, so please share.
So the community raised over 1.1 million to do these panels over the 6-week period, and it was surprising. All the money came from the local area, but when we were approached, Robert said he wanted the investment to be available to everybody in the village, and so we did have some discussions, but Robert said he wouldn't allow it if the minimum investment was any higher than £250, because it had to be available to absolutely everybody. So finally they did agree, and there are a few investors at that level, but we do feel that the smaller investors should have the opportunity of receiving 10% a year returns from the income. I mean, they've performed fantastically, especially over the last year, so the whole village is very happy with their investment.
One of the ways in which the solar panel sheep that we have just seen make a difference on this yard is with the horse walker. Now, we don't often see these on DIY yards, I think it's fair to say, and as a livery yard owner, you might look at them and think, oh, electricity use, but all of these are powered by the solar panels. Turnout, and winter turnout in particular, is a really contentious issue in the equestrian space. And at Mill Farm Livery, they've come up with a solution that offers the best of both worlds whilst also remaining sustainable. I'm here with James, who's a livery at Mill Farm Livery. James, can you tell me a little bit about what we have here behind us?
So here we have the winter grip pens, which can be used all year round, but many use them, like me, in the winter, and they are the perfect solution for both mud fever and very good for the horses as they can socialise on the day or the night. For me personally, it has been great for the environmental sustainability, where it has saved me so much bedding over the years, where I can just put my horses out and then don't have to worry about mucking out. It is such a time saver, and it has really helped me here at Mill Farm.
I think it's worth saying as well that you have access to your grass paddocks all year round. So this is very much, if you want to put them in here, you can do, if you're dealing with a mud fever problem or something like that. But you have the grass paddocks as well.
Yeah.
So behind me we have what I have affectionately called gardens. We're seeing them a bit more in the UK now. They used to be much more popular in Europe and the US. And they are essentially where you have the stable at the back, but the horse also has access to an outside area. And this is part of Mill Farm's VIP package. So it's a little bit of a step up from the normal DIY, but it just gives the horse an option to come outside during the day or the evening and interact with other horses over the fences here, whilst also just letting them choose whether they want to be inside or outside. Particularly useful for those horses who are rehabbing from an injury, but is generally a really nice option for the horses, and of course you'd imagine would save on bedding from a sustainable point of view as well. As horse owners, we all have our fair share of pony poo every day, but it's quite interesting the way that you have chosen to set up your muck heap, which is covered, which we don't always see, and some of the other aspects to how you get rid of the waste here. So talk me through some of that.
We put a roof over it to keep the rain off, so we don't get so much dirty water coming out of it into the drains, so it's better for the environment.
Yeah. And actually we were just saying off camera that the way that you choose to get rid of your water waste, both from the muck heap and also from the hay steamer, is quite important.
Yes, it's stop the dirty water going down into the brook, which goes through the village.
So you have a completely different drainage system essentially for those.
Yeah.
And we were also talking a bit about what actually happens to all of the horse poo here.
Yeah, it all gets spread on the fields as organic fertiliser.
So we're essentially in the hay barn now, which of course you'd expect to see on most farms in England. What you wouldn't expect to see are these. So tell me what this is and what it's here for.
This is a water tank, 10,000 litres. We've got 5 of them, and it collects the water off the shed roofs, which then goes back into the water troughs and the taps around the farm.
Incredible.
And the toilet, outside toilet.
Pretty useful for, I guess a lot of people think of England and they think, how much solar panel energy could you possibly get? But I think rainwater is something that we can all agree we have plenty of.
Yeah, the horses drink the rainwater, which is obviously better than drinking proper tap water, mains water.
So we learnt earlier how cameras are really useful on the yard from an insurance point of view, but for Alison, one of the liveries here, I think it's fair to say that the cameras gave you something a little bit closer to your heart. So tell me what happened.
So we have a pony called Rosie, who's 24. She has historical injuries to her front legs, and she was doing what ponies do in the field and running around, and injured her leg again and went down. We had to get an emergency vet out, and we managed to get her back to a stable, but she was given quite a lot of pain relief, and so was down in her stable. Obviously we were all very worried, and we stayed with her, but she was not showing any signs of wanting to get up. The vet had to leave for another emergency. We stayed for a little bit longer, but I had to go home, and we live half an hour's drive away from the yard. But the fact that we had the cameras meant I was able to do that. I was able to go home, I was able to get on with what I needed to get on with, but able to keep a check on Rosie and watch her on the cameras. I was eating my tea later on that evening, and just before the time limit came for having to call the emergency vet out, Rosie decided to stand up and start eating her hay, which was fantastic because Julia was also down here at the yard watching the cameras. And we both simultaneously went, yay, she's up. And that was lovely. And it meant that during the night time as well, I was able to have peace of mind of checking her on the stable in the stable to make sure that she was still up and she was happy and she was eating. So that was fantastic.
For a lot of people, I think it will resonate that you live half an hour away, because many people will not choose the closest yard to them. They'll choose the yard that best suits them and their horses. And so being able to look at your horse on a camera and not do the second trip, or stay here with the Wi-Fi which is available so that you don't have to go home. You were talking about your daughter and her GCSE, so tell me about that as well.
So yes, my daughter Lottie was studying for her GCSEs last year, and she had some Zoom lessons and she was able to have those here, so she could get on with sorting her ponies out and spend time with her ponies, but she was able to come in here where it's nice and quiet, do a Zoom, which was lovely.
Yeah, I bet as well as being sustainable, probably made you Mum of the Year, I think, allowing your daughter to do that.
Definitely, yeah.
Sadly, sometimes plastic is unavoidable, and that is the case here with some of the bedding that you can see behind me. But at Mill Farm, the bedding goes from this to this. This bench is made up entirely of bedding and haylage packaging, and there's a couple of them on the yard, and if I do say so myself, they're quite smart. Another simple sustainable measure that they have here at Mill Farm is for those who live locally, rather than using their cars, they can cycle in and leave them on the very convenient bike rack. We spent a lot of this video talking about how livery yard owners can make decisions to be more sustainable, but many of us are liveries and individuals, and we too have a choice about the kinds of products and decisions that we want to make as individuals to be more sustainable. So we've partnered with Honest Riders, who have a new range of Honest Horse products. The primary focus here are products that are plastic free and primarily refillable. So items such as this tack cleaner and these little refillable bottles mean that rather than spending money on essentially shipping water or 70% water of a product, you simply buy it once for the first time and then refill every time you need something new, as well as things like this shampoo bar, which are completely plastic free. I'm really excited to get to try these on my own horse, so stay tuned for that on my channels. It has been such a pleasure to visit Mill Farm today and learn about some of the things they're doing to be more sustainable. And hopefully, if you are a livery yard owner, you've got some thought starters to take away and think about how you might want to do it for your own yard. If you ever need livery yard insurance, don't forget that this is something that SEIB offers, and you can visit their website for more information.